So I want to take a moment and welcome everyone here tonight. I do want to ask everyone to turn off their phones because it'll cause technical difficulties and it's rude. So yeah, well, just so it doesn't ring while we're in the middle of the meeting. Yeah, I do too. So I hear you. So I want to welcome everyone here tonight. So I know most of you have the agenda. We're going to switch the agenda up a little bit. We're going to have our district attorney, Erik Nasarenko, speak first. As many of you know, Erik was a former or is a former Ventura City Council member, so he's very close to our community. But now he has the great big job of managing the justice system. Keeping it just. So, Erik, come on up.
Thank you. And Barbara, just let me know when I'm at time because I could, give a closing argument for 6-7 hours. It's great to be back before friends. I want to thank Kathy for inviting me. And what I thought I would do is just provide a segue into Commander Brown and what we're seeing at the DA level from the Ventura Police Department, kind of, from our viewpoint, what cases are coming in, what are we seeing more of, what types of crimes do we see here in Ventura that are similar perhaps in other parts of the county. And I'll begin with something that won't surprise you at all, and that's the alarming and staggering increase in fentanyl-based cases. I'll share with you just a statistic. I refer to this very much as the shadow pandemic because it emerged during and after COVID-19. In the Ventura County DA's office, 2019, we had 18 fentanyl-based case filings, 18. Year ending 2023, last year, we had 756. For those of you who are good at percentages, that is a more than 4,000% increase. And it may or may not surprise you that this, unfortunately, tragically, is accompanied by a number of alarming overdose deaths. In 2022, there were 183 overdose deaths in Ventura County, where fentanyl was among the leading drug or among several drugs found in the toxicology analysis. Last year, it went down slightly, which is positive, to 178. And we're seeing a similar downward trend this year, which is also positive. But the majority of those 178 deaths happen right here in the city of Ventura, followed by our most populous city, the city of Oxnard. Just to give you those figures. $82 of those overdose deaths here in Ventura. The next closest city was Oxnard at 77. This may surprise you. We oftentimes associate overdose deaths with youth, teenagers at parties, individuals who maybe are going to Cabo San Lucas or elsewhere and taking a recreational drug. I tell people in 2024, there is no such thing. Each and every illicit substance has to be presumed to have this deadly synthetic opioid in it. But this is very much a drug of middle-aged despair. To give you a sense of those who are dying from this drug, the majority of those 178 from last year were between the ages of 31 and 60. Between 31 and 60. So I share that because it's a little bit counterintuitive. Most people, they think about getting a pill on Snapchat, or they think about somebody recreationally using cocaine or snorting Xanax and dying. But this is very much something that's happening to those between the ages of 31 and 60. So what do we know about Ventura? In preparation for tonight's discussion, I wanted to pull some statistics. Commander Brown will probably amplify these, but this is a similar story in terms of VPD submissions. We do everything by either a penal code number or a health and safety code number. So I asked staff to run health and safety code section 11350. That is the section for cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Rapid decrease in heroin, the synthetic opioid fentanyl has replaced it. So just to give you the numbers, this mirrors what we're seeing countywide. 2021, there were 136 fentanyl-based submissions by the Ventura Police Department. The following year, 278. And then last year, 288. You see the upward trend. And with 2.5 months still to go in the year of 2024, we're at 318. So unfortunately, the trajectory is going up. So as the DA, what are we doing about this? Let me share with you a couple of items. One, we prosecute aggressively, zealously dealers, traffickers, and smugglers. You have to. You have to stop the flow of this deadly poison into Ventura County. A number of different ways we do that. One is we admonish now in court, should you sell and somebody should die, you can and will be charged with second-degree murder. Basically, the idea here is they're acting with implied malice. They've been told not to do it, yet they did it again. And as a result of doing it again, somebody died. They knew. The implied malice basically is the reckless indifference of doing it yet again. The other thing that we've done, somewhat non-traditional, I'm going to share with you two areas that I'm very passionate about, and that's the prevention side. We prosecute hard, but we also need to understand the vast majority of these individuals are in the throes of addiction. So in California, something was passed several years ago called judicial diversion. What does that mean? You're diverted from the criminal justice system for low-level misdemeanors. There's no case, there's no booking, you're not going to go into jail. We said to the judge and to the public defender, let's try to incentivize some type of substance use disorder treatment in exchange for an earlier release from diversion, if that makes sense. So we started this about 7 months ago. We've had 140 individuals who were diverted from the court for drug use. Hi, Carol. And those individuals went to the second floor of the courthouse. It's in our Hall of Justice. They meet with a drug addiction expert. They undergo a 20, 30-minute screening. What's the reality here? Some will just do that screening to get off diversion earlier and we'll never see them again. But this is one person at a time. Some are actually going to get into a treatment because they were referred to it and it's going to help save their life. The other thing I'll share with you that we're doing a little bit differently than in years past, I recognize that we get a lot of money from bad guys. Think asset forfeiture, ill-gotten gains. You know, you can go to cars, boats. I mean, more realistically, in our case, it's cash. So we have seized cash. And I asked one of our chiefs, can we take some of that seized cash and return it to combat drug addiction, to go ahead and actually use what drug dealers are peddling to help drug users get help? The answer was yes. So right now in the Ventura County DA's office, we are sponsoring on a quarterly basis what we call sober living beds or step down facilities through the Ventura County Medical Center detox facility. It's a great program. It's done through the foundation, the Healthcare Foundation, and it's something that I'm going to continue to do as long as I'm DA, because here's the reality. You go through detox, you go through withdrawal management, where do you go next? You know, you have to transition. Why is this important to me as a DA? Because it reduces caseloads, it saves lives, and frankly, I mean, Mike can talk about this. You can arrest, you can book, you can jail. They're going to be out 2 days later. or sometimes 8 hours later. So the cycle repeats itself. The idea is to break the cycle and actually to get them some help. So those are a couple areas I wanted to illuminate. We're also seeing, again, not surprisingly for Ventura, an increase in vagrancy-related crimes. Specifically, we're seeing an increase in petty thefts, 117 in 2022, 132 in 2023, and 148 so far this year. And similarly, we're seeing an increase in grand thefts. Again, what's the distinction between the two? It's that $950. Below 950, misdemeanor petty theft. Above 950, value of loss, grand theft. We're also seeing, again, not surprisingly, an increase in trespass, what we call Penal Code Section 602, as well as an increase in illegal lodgings. So think about the RV that's in the Vaughn Shopping Center for too long, or think about the person who has set up shop, sleeping bags, and tents outside a Starbucks or a Subway. Again, not surprising. These are quality of life crimes. They impact all of us, and we're seeing more case submissions here in the DA's office. So I'm going to go ahead and then just shift over to legislative accomplishments, because I'm very proud of what we were able to do as a county this last legislative session, because it just ended 23 days ago, September the 30th. The governor signed 3 of the bills that we helped to write and helped to sponsor, one of which was sponsored by, of all people, a Silicon Valley assembly member. He was deliberately chosen because he's from the Silicon Valley. And this was a bill that will ban computer-generated, AI-driven child pornography. So we had been seeing in our caseload, frankly, cases that we thought we could prosecute, but then couldn't. Why? Because to our trained investigators, we have a dedicated unit that just looks at nothing but what we call child sexual abuse material. They recognize these were not real children. They resembled to, all of us. We would see somebody who was being exploited in that child pornography context, but there were certain distinctions that, once pointed out to me, revealed that they were driven by AI and computers. So we had to change that. I mean, obviously, we all know AI. The computational process is based upon real images. It has to be motivated and inspired by what's already out there already. So it's taking exploitation of these children and putting it into perpetuity through these images. And also, just as a former sex crimes prosecutor, these images are unfortunately used to groom and normalize later exploitation, molestation, and assault. Basically, here's what you see. This person's doing it to this girl. It's totally normal. That is a way, unfortunately, and just really deviantly, that sometimes this grooming will happen. So that bill will become law January the 1st, 2025. And then we also, through Senator Monique Limon, your senator, were able to strengthen the sex battery statute. I'll just give you a specific example. This will sound really bizarre, but under California law right now, if a person touches the intimate part of another and does so with the intent for sexual gratification or arousal, that's a sexual battery. But if that perpetrator takes the victim's hand and places it on his or her intimate part, it is not. Why? Because the physical touching is being done in this case by the victim. That made no sense to me. So this was actually based on a case that came in a couple of years ago where I said, how can this be? They're forcibly taking the hand of somebody else and placing it on their groin for stimulation. That's got to be a sex battery, just as if the person was putting their hand directly on the victim's private part. So again, January 1st, that will be remedied. And then lastly, Jackie Irwin, we all know Jackie Irwin, There's an organized retail theft bill that we finally got passed. It's good for judicial economy and prosecutorial resources. I'll explain why. So let's say you have a crew and this happens. They're hitting Home Depots in Orange County, LA County, and Ventura County. Years ago, through Jackie and others, we were able to consolidate all of those organized retail thefts into one courthouse, into one county. That makes sense, of course. Judicial economy, rather than have multiple cases in multiple counties, multiple prosecutors, multiple defense attorneys, let's just do it in one place. That power was stripped of us. It was taken away. It was restored. It will take again effect January the 1st of 2025. And, you know, I just believe in terms of preservation of scarce resources, it makes sense. The crimes have to have similar features. They have to have, you know, what we call similar conduct and common schemes. But again, it allows us to say, all right, we'll take those from LA, we'll take those from Santa Barbara, or vice versa. They may want to take ours depending on witnesses and courtroom availability and the like. And then I've got, of course, lots of information that I'm going to leave with you, but it has to do a little bit with gun safety. And I'll share with you what I mean by that. Last month, September, was Suicide Prevention Month, and we are seeing the highest number of firearm-related suicides in Ventura County in the last 6 years. One of the ways as the DA that we can, I believe, just prevent accidental homicide and suicide-related deaths is through the safe storage law. If you have a firearm in your house and there are minors within that house, or if you have knowledge that minors will be going to that house, you are required under the law to lock it, secure it, and make sure that kids don't have ready access to that firearm. That is the law. We've seen tragically in Georgia just a couple months ago what happens when children can get a hold of firearms. Similarly, in Michigan, the parents were prosecuted for involuntary manslaughter. My objective here is not to say we're here to prosecute parents. My objective here is to save lives and say, if you have a firearm at home, which you have a Second Amendment right to do so, please, if there are kids in the home or if kids have access to it, just make sure it's stored, cable locked, and put away so that it doesn't fall into the hands of somebody who is in an acute crisis. Because what we know about suicide is that it can be very episodic, and you need to go ahead and just address it right then and there by preventative means, and not obviously allow for access to firearms for it to go the other way. So I've said a lot. I'm going to conclude there, and I'd be happy to go ahead and take any questions. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that the program for the step-down bed
Yeah.
center for people who are recovering, that you were, as long as you are the DA, you would want that program to continue. Is that what it's contingent on, the priorities of whoever the DA is?
I mean, I'm not going anywhere, first off. So I mean, you know, as long as I'm there and I'm not going anywhere, I want the program to continue. I mean, this is what I meant by that is, yeah, it's a policy of this administration. I mean, it's something that I asked staff to look into. They identified that it was a proper use of asset forfeiture funds. But you know, it's not, there's no requirement. I mean, there are broad uses of asset forfeiture. So yeah, I mean, to your point, it's not as if it's a requirement that we use it. In fact, it's somewhat of a novel use. Yeah.
Thank you. Great presentation. What is the availability of naloxone in the city, in the county, through law enforcement? Can you get it free somewhere, or, you know, how well is it distributed with that money that you're acquiring?
Yeah, great question. I mean, one of the reasons we believe we're seeing a reduction in overdose deaths is because of the widespread availability of naloxone, Narcan. It's the opioid reversal. I'm going to leave you with a flyer, QR code. The answer is you need to undergo a 2 or 3 minute training. Like literally, it's and when I say 2 or 3 minutes, it's like 2 or 3 questions. You can come to the county and you can pick it up. I carry it regularly in my car. I have it in the trunk. But one, just know there's a good Samaritan law that will shield you from civil liability and prosecution. Just make sure you do that 2 or 3 minute training. And the answer is we do give it out as a county. You can scan this QR code to learn more. First responders, schools, fire, police. I know Commander Brown and the VPD, they all have it, but it's much more available even today than it was a year ago. Yeah. DJs?
Yeah,
Oh, you mean at nightclubs? Oh, yeah.
I would just add that Gold Coast, most of our bus drivers, we don't require our bus drivers to carry it, like most do, but we had. At Gold Coast, we don't require our bus drivers to carry it, but most do, and we had one operator that used it twice within the span of a month.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, Steve.
Hey, that was a great presentation. Thanks. Hate to take it off topic, but I have heard of some shakedowns of local businesses on this ADA rules where somebody's coming in and saying, hey, look, if you don't give us $10,000, we're going to basically sue you for ADA violations on your business. And you haven't heard of this. That's interesting because most people are settling for $5,000 or $6,000 instead of trying to push it. I'd love to talk to you about that. I know the Breakfast House had to repave their parking lot with an ADA handicap spot that was 2%. It's one of the tire shops in town, and this stuff is all happening. And my guess is nobody is suing, and so you're not seeing it, and therefore you don't know about it, but it's happening over and over to small businesses in the city. Somebody's going in Google Maps and just doing it from afar.
Is the suspicion that it's criminal in nature as some type of extortion racket?
It is one of those things where it's sort of frivolous lawsuit type thing. But since you wouldn't see a number of them to see that it's punitive or that not punitive, but just that it's sort of a bogus thing. There's nobody with an ADA problem coming to these buildings. There's just a lawyer or somebody in Orange County saying, all right, if we call these people, we'll have to tell them they have to put in a bathroom, or we're going to sue them and that'll cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so they just say, all right, go away.
Send me an email.
Okay.
No promises or guarantees that it'll result in
Tyson's nodding.
Yeah.
He's heard about it too. Yeah. I mean, in the architecture and planning world, it's sort of happening. And
one of the distinctions we always have to make, Tyson and Steve, is, and you guys know this,
yeah,
civil versus criminal.
yeah.
There's lawful and awful. And then there's kind of, where we come in terms of criminal filings. But we have a fraud special prosecutions unit. I'm happy to go ahead and have the prosecutors look at it. Sure.
Yeah, it'd be great to just have somebody look at it and say, this is a trend and something's not right here. And you probably don't even see it in your office. So
I don't. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much. I've got the handouts here for you. Please feel free to take them.
our sound man has asked me to tell you that it really helps if you hold the mic like this, whether it's a speaker or a question. You can hold it
Very nice
down.
job. You're welcome to stay, but I know you have something.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
All right, that was really great. Much appreciation to Erik. I mean, he works all day and then he comes here, so that's really nice. Next, I want to, first I want to thank Mike Brown, Commander Brown, for being so patient. And I'm going to introduce him, and he's going to tell us about Ventura crime stats.
Thank you, everybody. It's good to be here, and sorry, I have to follow that. So, but it kind of brings up some, we talk about these crime stats like they have up on the screen, and realistically, when we're talking about, like Erik was talking about fentanyl, and fentanyl that affects the community, it really starts to tie itself and interweave itself into a lot of these crimes that we're seeing. A lot of people don't have a ton of money to fund their habits. So when you don't have money, where can you get it to support your habit? You have to go out, you have to commit crimes. They're usually crimes of opportunity in order to feed and support your habit. So when we look at a lot of the burglaries, the thefts, sometimes even the fraud offenses, motor vehicle thefts and robberies, those oftentimes can be interwoven with drug addiction and supporting that habit. Any of the drug and narcotic offenses that you see up there, most of the time, 99% of those are arrests for drug offenses. And I got one question after the last presentation asking, well, how many of these end up in arrests? Well, quite honest, most of them end in a lot of arrests. And if we can't make an arrest on that site, we get body worn video, we get other video from businesses, and we try to put out to the other officers to identify individuals involved in crimes, which ends up in being able to identify that person. So when you see these offenses, especially the thefts, people aren't getting away with that. They are held accountable when we can make arrest, and that's done a majority of the time. So getting into the stats from last month going into this month, we actually saw a reduction. Last month, there was 80 incidents, or I'm sorry, 84. The month before that, there was 70. And out of these incidents this month, there was a reduction in assaults. And when we say assaults, they're not all really bad assaults. A lot of these are domestic violence incidents, which get coded as assault offenses. So as far as like assault with a deadly weapon or a bad, fight that ended in significant injury, those are very, very few and far between. Most of these are domestic related. Out of the burglaries, a lot of those ended up not residential, but either business or mailboxes being broken into. And two of them actually, I think, were miscoded as shoplifts because the penal code section is 459 is burglary. 459.5 is shoplifting. So I think two of those may have been miscoded as shoplifts. There was one residential attempt where a screen was cut, but we're not seeing a significant rise. And some of these were businesses or mailboxes. We saw a decrease in narcotic offenses this past month, a decrease in fraud, a decrease in thefts in our mall area. We saw a slight increase in motor vehicle thefts and an increase in weapon arrests. One of those was a pepper spray arrest, and one was a arrest for possession of a firearm. So those are the stats in comparison from last month to this month. I will bring up, he talked about organized retail theft. That is something that we're working on trying to address with technology to capture a lot of these out-of-town crews that come up to commit crimes at our shopping centers. And we work with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, who actually has a task force. And like I said, we're working on putting more technology, more cameras to capture more license plates and stuff that we get these crews. We did have, and not in our area, but in the city, over the last month, had a organized crew that was breaking into houses. So what I would, without divulging any details of the investigation, I would like to tell everybody to be vigilant. If you see something that looks out of place in your neighborhood, please call it in. Oftentimes, a lot of these people will pose as construction workers, or they're going door-to-door salesmen, and they're really just probing to see who's home, who's not home, who has security, who has cameras, and so forth. Sometimes they wear vests, sometimes they don't. So if you see something, especially if people are walking around with masks on, probably an indication, doesn't look, see something, say something, call us, let us come out and check it out. Any questions? I know I was kind of throwing a lot in there really quick.
There is this truck that was driving up the street, saw in front of my house. This guy jumped out and came up to the door and rang the doorbell. And I answered, and he said, he mumbled something about redoing my lawn. And not at all, but no. So I was very suspicious that there was a scam. So then on his way.
Absolutely. And sometimes those are legitimate businesses and sometimes they're not. And the problem is you don't know who's legitimate and who isn't, especially if they're not in a marked vehicle, they don't have a business, and so forth on their truck. So any of that stuff, absolutely. If you can get a vehicle make and model, what the description and get it in as soon as possible, that really helps with being able to catch people, in the area. You talked about scam, and I want to address that real quick because I have seen a couple of scams, especially with gift cards and with people calling in saying, "Hey, we have a picture of your house. We have spyware on your computer. We're seeing our keystrokes. If you don't pay me X amount of money, then we're going to release all your information." There's tons of scams out there. We can go all day long on scams. So the FBI has a good scam website. Be very, very cautious with gift cards, buying gift cards in businesses, because oftentimes they will take the gift cards out. They'll scratch it. They'll get the number. They'll seal it and put them back on the display. So as far as buying gift cards, I wouldn't buy any gift cards unless they're locked up in a container somewhere behind the counter where there's no access, or you can purchase them online oftentimes. But be very, very careful with gift cards that are, hanging on the displays.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up because my wife was a victim of this and it cost us $200 for everybody that money back. And all she did was go to CVS and buy some gift cards. And the packages were not fairly tampered with. What they had done, they had gone through, they had scratched off the stuff, they had scratched off some numerals, so she couldn't even figure out what it was. But she went to redeem and it said it's already been redeemed, because what happens is they set up bots that check those gift cards. They set up bots that check those gift cards every couple minutes. And so as soon as it got scanned at CVS, as soon as the gift card got scanned at CVS, the money went into a different Amazon account. So Amazon is like, it's not our business, and the credit card company would charge back. I brought this up before. Afterwards, I found out that our city manager and former sheriff had the same thing pulled on him at a different location. But don't buy any that are hanging up, because those could be something that, somebody buys blank gift cards, does thousands of them, tens of thousands. And then they just somebody else takes them and puts them on pegs wherever they go. And then when you put the money on it, the money disappears. So don't buy gift cards that are sitting up. You will lose the money if this is happening. And there's no way to tell that it's bad until you get it home and try.
Is BPD warning retailers to stop?
We've warned people, we put out social media, but it's up to the retailers. And like Mike was talking, you end up in this vicious cycle because the retailer, you purchased it, they sold you, and it was scanned and it's good, but it's being taken from you before you can use it. So on their end, they've upheld their end of the bargain. The other side, Amazon or wherever you're getting the gift cards, like, well, you've already purchased the money and it got used because you didn't use it. That's not my problem. The credit card company, you just end up in this vicious cycle and there's nowhere to get your money back out of it. So it's extremely tragic. We've had several employees of ourselves at the police department have been victim to this as well. So I don't even buy gift cards anymore unless it's either online or locked up behind a case.
Yes, the Victorian Telegraph, and it turns out that my wife wasn't the first one. They knew that this was going on, but they refused to lock up their gift cards.
Yeah, it's up to the individual retailers how they manage their products. Any other questions? I'd like to just let everybody know next Wednesday at Lovewell Coffee at Ventura Avenue in Seneca, we'll be doing Coffee with a Cop from 8 a.m. till 9:30. So if you want to come out and speak to your local law enforcement and have a cup of coffee, we'd love to see you. All right. Next Wednesday. The 30th?
No, you were right on.
Okay.
You were on the time.
All right. Yes, the 30th. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Commander Brown. Okay, so now we are going to, who is speaking, actually? Who should I introduce? Yeah. Okay, so I do want to take 1 minute. I don't know if I was remiss in thanking Marco Cuevas, who's here tonight. He has come in as an absolute lifesaver. Bob Shilkin, as you know, he's in Delaware right now and he's helping us out. And Erik Rosenberg, the two of them usually handle all of our technology. They both happen to be gone at the same time, and Marco graciously offered to help us out. So thank you so much, Marco. So next, I'd like to introduce Ventura College's president, Dr. Claudia Lourido-Habib.
Thank you. I have to put it here. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here again. It was great to meet some of you at the last meeting that was in person and some of you online at the last Zoom meeting. It is a pleasure to be here with part of my team to give you an update on a couple of items that are probably in the mind of some of our neighbors and community partners. So I'm not going to talk much longer. I'm going to let my team present. And I'll just say that we're just touching the surface with a brief update. Vanessa Stotler, who is our Director of Marketing Communications and handles social media, is going to talk about trees and landscape on campus, a couple of things that have happened on campus. And then our Vice President of Administrative Services, James Zavas, is going to give us an update on a project that he's leading, which is the housing project. And we have our architect, one of our team members in the design team, and he will be properly introduced when that topic comes in. And of course, I just need to emphasize, just because I'm so proud of the college and the personnel that we have, that beyond these things that you see here, there's a lot of people behind the scenes doing a lot of work with a lot of care. And so, you care about the college, we care about the college as well. So this is just a little taste of what's happening. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Vanessa Stotler here. I've also wanted to start that I've been a victim of also the gift cards. My brother gave me one for my birthday and it was already redeemed. So he felt terrible about that. Do I just let you know when I need the slides or perfect? So next slide. So I wanted to start off with something that was brought to my attention recently. And it was a social media post actually of some information about some removal of trees on campus as well as some shrubs. And I wanted to take some time to address that. Just because the social media post may have had just a bit of some misinformation. So I did want to clear that up. There have been some trees that were removed on campus recently, and a lot of them were removed due to safety concerns. So as you can see on the picture on the left-hand side, there was a tree that was on campus, and it was, as you can see, it was swaying, and it was removed due to safety concerns. We were worried that it could have fallen on students or cars or vehicles and created some damage. So we did have to make the decision to remove that tree that you're seeing there. Because it did pose significant risks to students as well as personal vehicles of students as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We've also had some trees, some were removed for safety, some had fallen on campus. The tree that you see there on the left-hand side, one of the branches fell down, and when we were inspecting it, upon further inspection, actually, we saw that you could see on the right-hand photo there, the rings showed that the tree was dying. It was diseased already. So just due to that, we did have to make the decision to remove that tree down. So it was cut just due to the condition of the tree. And so some of these trees, unfortunately, when we reveal things like that for any future safety issues, we do have to remove them. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The other thing was the pruning on campus. So we had to do some significant pruning on campus of shrubs and bushes that were there. So when you do prune, unfortunately, it doesn't always look the best, but it's done really for plant health. Once you prune all of those, it really redirects the health back to the plant itself so that it can re-thrive and grow. And so the ones that you're seeing there on the left were right by our police department on campus. And there was a lot of damage, unfortunately, from some squirrels that were burrowing, and so we did have to go in and clean that up. And so go ahead and go to the next slide. So I really wanted to bring this up because one of the things that our campus works on is the Ventura College Urban Forest Management. And so a little bit about that. We've worked really closely with Mariposa. And so what we're doing with them is each of the trees on campus and shrubs and everything, we've been working to ensure that we're tagging them. We're really keeping up with their health. And so we've been working closely with them in order to put together this whole thing. And I'd be remiss without saying that, Ventura County has been in a drought since 2012. And because of that and the extreme with some of the weather events that we've had in the past 2 years, we've had 2 significant atmospheric rivers that came through. It's really given a lot of extremes to our trees on campus. And so due to that, the health of those trees have really declined. And it created some health concerns for the trees, but also some safety concerns for us, for students, and making sure that everybody's safe. And so I really bolded here that, we're committed to preserving trees and replanting where removal is necessary. And we work very closely with Mariposa's Tree Management Incorporated to make sure that we are working with professionals and arborists that are very much know this information so that we can make those right decisions. And so, yeah, we really are hoping to aim with that. One of the things here, so what you're looking at is each of those little painted dots on there is a location on campus where we've been able to note where all of these trees, as well as some of the items within the urban forest management system, are pegged. So we can go into the system and click on one of those, and it brings up the tree, the number, what species it is. It also allows us to ensure that we're keeping track of the health. We're able to see some of the most recent things that were done to ensure that that it's being maintained. And so that's all done with not only our maintenance and operations department, but also with Mariposa Landscaping. And so on the next slide, just wanted to give you a bit of that. You could see the work orders on the left-hand side. This is from the start of the fiscal year. So since July 1st. And these are some of the work orders that have been completed by down south. And so what we're doing is you can see inside the system, there's a work orders, the tasks, the location. You can also see the tree ID. So we are ensuring that within this, we're keeping it, making sure everything's being done and followed with the guidance of professionals. And so I just wanted to mention that. Here's another image as well of some of those trees. You can see even in the front of campus over on Telegraph, that tree where it had fallen and branches. So it's been keeping us busy, but we're very, very committed at the campus. I can't underscore that enough with making sure everything's beautified and wonderful for the community. And so that's it. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, James, to talk about.
All right. So this is the fun part. Okay. I think it's fun anyway. So I don't think I've met most of you, but my name's James Zavas. I'm the Vice President of Business Services on campus. I get to work on this housing project. It's really, we've had a couple things that have slowed us down, but at this point, I think we just slammed our foot on the accelerator and the car is going about as fast as it can go down the road. So go ahead, next slide. Just a couple things about the project. This is a project that was funded by the state. The state was looking to alleviate really two different things. One, there's a shortage of housing in the state. I don't think that's any sort of a mystery. And then the other piece is we know that a large number of students, particularly community college students, have a lot of housing insecurity, don't necessarily know where they're going to sleep. So that's something that they saw an opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone and say, hey, what if we gave money to colleges to build more housing? That will put more housing in the communities as well as help out that student population so that maybe they can focus more on school and not have to struggle quite so much and take so long to get back to where they're able to get back into the community with that education. So like I said, it is a state grant that is funding the construction piece of it. There have been funding questions over the last year. The state authorized this program when there was those surpluses we all saw in the newspaper. And then as the deficits started coming in on the state budget, they started going, well, maybe we should take some of that money back. And so we kind of were in a little bit of a weird stage of, are we moving forward with this project? Is this really happening? So once we kind of got something on that, we moved forward. We've got our architects on board. We've got Tyson, who's here with R&T. They're partnering with a firm called Methune. So between the two of them, we're working forward now. We started last week with our design meetings. I believe we reached out at least to this group to make sure you were aware of them. But we are looking at about 290 to 300 beds. One of the questions that keeps coming up is like, well, who's going to be living there? The question is, like right now, that we're still working on that part, but we do know it is going to be our students with significant financial need. They do have to be enrolled full time. And then we're working on the selections process, right? We're looking at this a couple years down the road. So right now we're really, as we're working on designing the building, we're also working on designing the program. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is kind of where the project site is, except for there's a pop-up over it. A perfectly placed pop-up, I'll say. So you can see it's just below our football field there. It kind of steps down. So that's really the site where we're going to looking to build this. If you can go next slide, and I'm actually going to have you go 2 slides, and I'm going to go back to that one. Sorry. All right. So this, Tyson, thank you for the slide, but it's great. Basically, if you cut the city in half and looked at kind of the elevations as they go, see, I listen to these things. If we cut the city in half and you look at the elevations, you can really see, like, from the right-hand side, the very top up there are 2 trees coming down the hill to kind of the hills above there. Foothill Road is kind of right where that second vertical line is. You can see Loma Vistas where that red line is. The next building there, that's our LRC building. And then you can see our stadium. And then that little pink blob there, that's really like a 4-story student housing building. We're looking to try and keep it below the stadium. So if you can see like that keeps that at 4 stories, it stays down below the sight line of the stadium. That's really our big target there because we already have the stadium there. It's already right below it. We can get up a few extra, we can go up with the stories because we're lower on the geography. So that's where we're looking. We're trying to build it right. We need to find a way to get 300 beds and a little bit of a postage stamp space. So we're kind of working around that idea, but we are really keeping in mind the idea of all the different sight lines. All right, go back to that one. This is really our overall project schedule. You can see all the way over to the left up at the top, we're in concept design. That's where we're at right now. We're really working on designing the concept of what this whole building could look like. We had our first design meetings with the campus last week. We had 2 meetings over a couple different days, had probably 60 or 70 people show up. We've also been getting a lot of feedback through some surveys we've been doing. We're going to do a couple other events to talk to students more next week. Just to kind of keep getting as much feedback as we can. Go ahead and maybe 2 slides up. And really what we're trying to do is answer, this question of how do we create a vibrant, inclusive, and safe community that creates a welcoming sense of home and belonging. Yes, again, thank you for the slide. Why redo what someone's already done well? But that is really what we're working towards. So the next slide, like I said, our first meetings were really in that information gathering stage, a lot of word clouds, a lot of trying to figure out what is it that matters to people. All right, next slide. One of the things we're looking at, and I think we've mentioned this when we've presented in the past, is we are looking to go towards a modular building style, kind of a prefab building style. This offers a lot of advantages. It's faster, it's more cost effective typically. And then on top of that, it also allows us to do a lot of the work off-site, which reduces a lot of that disturbance on campus, in the community, right? That construction noise. If they're building a lot of it somewhere else and then they bring them in and drop them like Legos onto something, I think it looks really cool. But that's kind of a nice little advantage. Okay, next slide. Just a few examples of some other buildings that have been built using modular building. And then next slide. Oh yes, and this is the best part. So November 13th, mark your calendars. It'll be fun, I promise. We are doing another campus visioning workshop. Around this, we are working on having it. You'll notice this is from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening. This is very much trying to make sure that as many community members as possible can make it. The QR code will let you RSVP to go ahead and come to the workshop. You can see really here we're working to get some more design pieces. I think Tyson might be able to help a little bit on exactly what we're doing, but a lot of it's around some of the design elements, the outdoor spaces, some of the indoor spaces, a lot of the amenities, things along those lines that would be there. So with that, does anybody have any questions about the student housing piece? Oh, of course, yes.
Hi, I'm a volunteer gardener at the Ventura College, and there have been some issues raised about the site where this is being built. In particular, the palm garden that exists at that site. And there's a local palm society and a state palm society who's very much concerned about the existence of that palm garden. It's not well kept right now. It's I don't know why, but the palms are dying, and probably the drought. But in any event, I feel that if it isn't addressed, there's going to be maybe some negative feedback from the Palm Society, and there's a wonderful, wonderful story behind that palm garden. If you people are not aware of it, it's amazing. Pauline and Joseph Sullivan traveled the world collecting seeds. She was in a wheelchair, and she hid the seeds in her wheelchair to bring them to Ventura, and they created this palm garden. And there's a plaque there. If anyone is interested, there's actually a plaque there to Joseph Sullivan about the palm garden. So it's part of the college's history. It's an amazing thing. There's, many, many varieties of palms around the college that he's responsible for. And actually she collected a lot of the seeds. So it's an amazing thing. And I just hope that that is preserved in some fashion with the construction. It's surrounded by the parking lot. I don't know what the extent of that is in any event. And the other thing is, and there was mention about the social media comment. Okay, so that the person who wrote that is a community activist, and she has written about things about the college before that have had some inaccuracies. But I responded to her, and I feel like she needs to be heard and perhaps listened to and spoken to and have some communication back and forth, because she has a big following, and if she's upset about something, her concern was the trees and that sort of thing. And so I think she does need to be listened to. I think there's a reason why these trees had to come down clearly. And she's misinformed about a lot of things, but in any event, she's an important person in Ventura. So there's that.
Great. Well, thank you. I can answer a little bit there. So on our list of things we know we have to address as we go through this, there's the memorial wall with all of the history from the pool, and there's a palm garden. So those are two things. I can't promise how we're going to be able to deal with it, but it is in our mind to do everything we can to make sure we work within that. Like I don't know. I'm definitely not a plant person. Maybe.
If I can, you don't mind. We have a nationally known landscape architect on our team. And it's actually one of the first things that I translated to the team, explained the history, the lineage, the story. The entire design team understands that. The beauty of palms is they're very easily relocated. We also saw the presentation we just had. We have an arborist report, catalogs them all. And I think it's a health and wellness discussion. And then working through that process, we're talking about open space and maybe where they can be relocated. I can't speak for the district, but I would assume that there would be a wonderful conversation. The Palm Society is a stakeholder, and maybe there's a teaming opportunity there to make this thing even better than what it is today, which it should be. So again, that's me speaking. I spoke out of turn, but I'm still gonna offer that up.
I'll just tell you, I don't think you're too far out of line. So no, that, like I said, those are two of the things that are on our list of we need to figure out how we deal with those as part of the construction planning. And as a campus, really to honor our history and honor all the stuff that's kind of come before as we repurpose this place, but we don't want to lose that history. Any other questions on that? All right. Well, Vanessa, I will give it back to you for the last, she's got the actual fun slides.
Just with final couple ones after the questions. Thank you. It's just that we know that this is the last college area community council before you take a break for January. So on the next slide, I just wanted to share some of, and I'll be brief. Really, I'm just going to try to encourage everybody to visit our website and our events webpage, but we have some upcoming VC athletics, different types of games that are coming, home games. These are all home games. So wonderful things that are happening. On the next slide, we have some performances that we have coming up. And that's for the performing arts. So next month, a couple of performances. There's 4 actually, Thursday through Sunday, different times for the Miraculous Journey of Edwin to Elaine, and we have tickets on sale. So and then the following one, we have some of the musical performances. With the Laurel Project, we have a piano player that will be joining us, and then a couple of other ones with the VC orchestras. Next, pretty much this weekend, Saturday and Sunday for By Love Be Bound and A Chain of Gold, and then the Laurel Project in November. And that's it. That's all I wanted to sneak in there. But if you want more information, that will be on our website because we always love to see the community come to these events at our performing arts centers, as well as any of our athletic events. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. A lot of really good information tonight. I do want to mention, Tyson talked about how transplantable palms are. There's a great book called Trees in Paradise by Jared Farmer, and it talks all about how most of the trees that we see in Los Angeles were transplanted there from other places. That being said, it is always sad to see trees being taken down for any reason, especially as it gets hotter and windier. But here's some good news. At Camino Real Park on October 29th at 10 a.m., we're planting 13 trees in the park and 5 more trees on we as in Ventura Tree Alliance is planting 13 trees at Camino Real Park and 5 more trees on Telephone Road. So we're putting trees out. We are at a net loss though in the city post the fire and the drought. So if you could keep your trees in, that would really be better for all of us. All right, next I want to introduce Russell Richardson, who's going to talk a little bit about our food drive.
Thank you, Barbara. I think we're so lucky to have the college at the heart of our community. Maybe we need to remind ourselves more often, and I'm sure every one of us could come up with a list of ways that we benefit from that. So you can partly see it tonight, how well they work with us and how well they keep us informed about what is going on. They've worked with the community council ever since our inception, and we've benefited from that relationship in many ways. So it does my heart good when we can do something very concrete, very direct to give back to the college. And we're doing that tonight by collecting food for the food pantry. I wanted to thank everyone who did bring some food tonight. I also want to thank those of you on Zoom who brought some by this afternoon and left it before the meeting. So we really appreciate all that. And I wanted to assure you that tomorrow I'll be taking all of that food over to the food pantry and presenting it to them along with your goodwill. So thanks to everyone. And I think we should give everyone who brought some food tonight a nice hand.
Thank you, Russell. Sure.
I'm very touched because I didn't know this was going on. So thank you so much. I mean, really, we're very committed to supporting our students. The Basic Needs Center works so many hours to help our students, and every contribution is so appreciated. So really, on behalf of my administrative team, the faculty, the staff, thank you to all of you for contributing towards the food pantry. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Habib.
Thank you. If I could just tie a bunch of these things together. You know, I've taken a number of classes at the college. My wife is taking some right now. My son is taking some. You know, I could not believe how many of the students that I worked with were housing insecure, food insecure, or homeless. The Performing Arts Center, I directed a play, and one of my actors was homeless. And, you know, I found this out partway through the process, you know, that they were having trouble getting to rehearsals. Well, it turns out that they were homeless. And we had a discussion, and I found several other students who, they wouldn't consider themselves homeless, but what they were doing was they were, spending 2 nights at this friend's house and a night at this friend's house and occasional nights in the car. It's staggering how bad the problem is. And so I really appreciate all the work for the housing. I just want to say, I'm not up for reelection. So I'm just going to say this. I wish it was taller than 4 stories, because here's the thing. It shouldn't be limited by fear that people are going to see it. That's the way I see it. I wish people would see it taller and recognize what it is and recognize the need and recognize that we've got to do better, and that we have a lot of young people who are struggling in ways that most people are just completely unaware of. And I also want to thank the college just for hosting these for so many years. This is my last college area community council as a council member. But before you go, I just wanted to make sure I said thank you.
All right. So probably you remembered about a year ago, we had Steve Schafer and a group of his, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Dawn. Yes. Sorry. We've had a little bit of a mix up today on the scheduling. So, all right. So next we're going to invite Don Wood, who is a commissioner with the City of Ventura's Parks and Rec Commission. Don?
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, no, when they skipped over me, we just kind of kept going, I guess is what happened. But it's okay. Thanks. It's great to be here. As chair, actually, this year of the Parks and Rec Commission, one of our main responsibilities, really, one of the things we can actually do is be the conduit to the community from the city and back and forth to the city council as well. And so that's one of the things we're really striving to do this year. So we've taken an initiative to get out in front of groups such as this, bring information, and also take information and find out what is really of interest to people when it comes to parks and recreation. Also, we meet every month, the second Wednesday of the month, open to the public. We welcome people to come and attend. You can, if you want to make public comments, you can do that. We welcome those as well. And if you just want to listen to the presentations, we do host presentations of interest to the community. So there's a lot of really good information that's presented at the commission meetings. And so again, I offer that invitation to anybody. You can look at our agendas online and feel free to stop in anytime. And while we can't reply, during the meeting is similar to the city council to public comment, we do take them under advisement, and very often those topics become agenda topics in a future month's meeting. So we take that responsibility, seriously. I just wanted to kind of take a chance of it's interesting with some of the information that the college folks were presenting, because they talked about a lot of the same kind of things, urban forestry and the trees and, the activities going on with programs. So I wanted to throw out just some numbers, because I don't think people really maybe necessarily always think about, parks and recreation and all of the things that happen there in that department. But in addition to the 46 parks that we have, there are a number of programs. The youth programs have over 1,800 youth participating. Youth and adult sports is over 2,600 youth and over 11,000 adult participants. And the aquatics, even separately, another 2,600 youth and another almost 8,000 adults. And these are people, of course, we have the staff and the team that have to support this. But the number of leagues that are going on is phenomenal. So there's a lot of activity. People are taking advantage of it. You see, hopefully you see the guides that come out, seasonally about all the different programs that you can participate in if you want. And we have everything from the youngest children to seniors, so you can do any, participate in many, many different activities that are managed by the Parks and Recreation. Also, we even have 20+ field agreements with other people. So any, these other organizations that sponsor their own programs, we have those programs in addition that we help manage. And I believe, Barbara, in that tree planting that you're talking about coming up with the Tree Alliance, that most of the planning will actually be done by Parks and Recreation staff, right? The urban forestry folks. So because I participated in one of those too, and I saw the guys who were doing the real hard work. But I want to talk about a couple of the major projects also we have going on in the city, in case you're not aware of those. But there's a couple of really exciting things going on. We have the West Park Skate Park, which is going to be a phenomenal new regional destination for that community. And construction, we've gotten now to the point where construction has actually begun. So it's in the same location where the old small little skate park was. It's going to be a completely different animal when it's done. And it's going to be something that people will seek to visit from a regional basis. So this would be really a great addition to our city. Also, just last night, I thank the City Council for approving the construction for the Marina Park rebuild. So that is, again, another project that's been going on for a period of time now. We've got, the design is done, the equipment's purchased, so now the construction is taking place, and that park will be reopened, better than new, very shortly. There's another interesting project that's going on that we're involved with, and that's something that is now also in the, as you saw, the kind of community involvement portion of the program there. It's the Ventura Santa Barbara Branch Line Trail. And this is a trail that actually will ultimately be a 30-mile trail from Montalvo all the way to Piru. The Ventura portion is about a 4-mile trek that goes from the Montalvo Metrolink to the Saticoy train depot. And it's a biking and hiking trail that will go all along this rail line. And the design process is going on right now, so you have a chance to participate if you'd like. I know they will be participating with some of the other community council groups that are more toward the east end here in the next month. So you can look forward to maybe participating in one of those if you'd like. Also, there will be some actual larger community input sessions that will take place over the next 3 months as well. So keep your eye out for those. There's a survey as well going on right now. If you'd like to respond to that survey, it's a design survey. So if you'd like to get your input on that, take a look for that. Should be able to find it on the city website under major programs. And again, you can get your input on that. One other topic of, that's been kind of big, it's an ongoing thing, is the Buenaventura golf course that a lot of people ask about. And you may have seen after the recent city council action, there's a study now that's underway to evaluate hydrology, flood mitigation, and market analysis. So while we do have some approvals from FEMA with money, there's a lot of other factors that need to be considered with that property and how it's going to end up. I know a lot of the golfers really wanted to come back, but there's a lot of issues, with the things that I just addressed. So all of those things will be looked at, and ultimately then decisions will be made on what to do with that property. So that's really what I had to do. The river trail is open. Since it was already open, I kind of thought, well, we're done with that one. But yeah, the river trail, which of course Kathy was a major catalyst in that project, is something that we also completed this year. And there may be a little bit of work still going on, but I know that it's open. It's really much improved to what was the situation before. So if you've not taken advantage of that, I'd encourage everybody to get out there, walking or biking. Again, a biking and hiking trail that goes from Ventura on up to Ojai. So you can go north-south, and pretty soon you'll be able to go east-west. You can go up in the hills, and you can play in the parks. There's a lot of different ways to entertain yourself here in the lovely city of Ventura. But I don't know if anybody has any questions or any items you'd like to.
Yeah, someone on Zoom, Nadine, just wanted to point out that I guess podcast Ventura Vibes highlights the fabulous parks with a new series of 10-minute podcasts, and episode 6 is all about Olivas Adobe Historical Park. So she encourages everyone to go ahead and check that podcast series out.
Excellent. Very good. Oh, I also failed to mention, but apparently I understand now that commission meetings will be videotaped starting first of the year. So if you can't make it, you can actually look up same place you find the agendas, and you'll be able to watch tapes of the previous meetings. So another way to get good information. Very good. Any topics, park topics you want us
As
to
a part
pay
of that,
attention to?
river trail bike path reconstruction, I noticed they were doing some construction at Stanley Avenue. And that's kind of a dangerous part of the bike trail. Do you know, is there anything going on there to improve that intersection with the bike trail? That would help.
Yeah, it's a dangerous spot. And basically we have to wait until we redo that whole interchange before this problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a huge, issue, construction-wise. A lot of people get on the freeway there. Yeah. End of the day. All right. Thank you very much. Question? Sorry. Yeah. Or comment?
On the river trail, will there be access from the trail to the new skate park off that trail so people can bike in without getting on surface streets?
Yep. Oh. Ah, the pickleball courts, yes. Well, there are a number of pickleball courts actually available in the city, and I know there's demand for more. They'd like to have more, and it's a very interesting dynamic between the tennis folks and the pickleball folks for court space. I believe our city councilman has a comment.
Just wanted to suggest, Mr. Chair, that you consider the golf course, write it off, because, we can rebuild it. It's probably gonna flood again. It's gonna cost a lot of money. You're subsidizing every round of golf. It's not a money maker. Instead, let's turn it into a place for pickleball tournaments. Call it the pickleball palace. We can draw people from all over Southern California. The pickleball courts would be close to flood proof. If there was a flood, they'd be easy to rebuild. We don't have to build facilities. We just have to have a big parking lot with space for food trucks. And we would solve so many problems all at once. I don't consider it, Mr. Chair.
Well, yeah, not that I get to make that decision, but yeah, I think it's a good comment, and certainly I think the other big advantage of that is it's far enough away that the noise from the pickleball will not irritate the local neighbors, right? Which is the one challenge with pickleball, right? So, but topics like that are good examples. We've had pickleball folks come and present at our meetings as well. So, all right, that's it. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Don. And before you go, I did want to absolutely thank the Ventura City Urban Forestry Team. We at the Ventura Tree Alliance fundraise for the trees, but they don't allow me to run that skip loader. But yeah, we couldn't do it without them. That's great. Stacy's Arizona, best. All right. Okay, so moving on. I want to introduce Steve Schafer. As I mentioned before, he has been, he was here about a year ago to talk about the historical context survey, and today he's going to give us an update. Steve?
It's just weird.
I know, it's weird.
Hello, my name is Steve Schafer. I'm just here to tie everything together. So when Erik Nasarenko, the first speaker, was on city council, he approved, along with unanimously the rest of the city council, a citywide historic context statement and survey. So only up until that time, only the downtown and the avenue had been surveyed. And there was really no understanding of what historical stuff was out there in the rest of the city. So at the moment, the timing is perfect because the City of Ventura Historic Preservation Committee is about to look at, or just looked at, maybe it's tonight or tomorrow night or next week, the college area historic survey draft findings. So basically somebody has driven up and down every single street in Ventura in the last few years since Erik Nasarenko was on city council. And they have documented what may or potentially will be or is historic. And that's data that we never had before. So one of the things that is historic, speaking of housing and stories, is the 7-story Ventura townhouse across the street, which is hard to tell that's 7 stories because of all the trees that are all around it that are 5 and 6 stories tall. And that is a fantastic 1965 Welton Becket building, probably one of our finest mid-century buildings. It would be a real shame if it was only 3 stories because somebody was scared of height, and because you'd have 4 stories of historic, you know, not historic people, but seniors. Whoops. 4 stories of seniors that wouldn't have a place to live. So that really is something that you have to think of. If you don't have a 6-story building, you might have 2 3-story buildings, or, you know. So I'm with you, Mike. I'm sort of a fan of height if it's not imposing on the, you know, historic downtown, which has a lot of sensitivity, and this is a really good place for it. So as I was saying, and I'm sorry for that pop-up that came up in the middle of your talk, but there is in the chat a link to the new survey findings. They are draft findings. It is just basically the first pass, but this college area has data in there. It's a little bit cryptic because there's a lot of planner ease, but you'll see a staff report link. If you go to that link in the chat, it's to the City of Ventura Historic Preservation Committee, and you'll see a map, and the map looks like this. Oops. I don't need that. It's not important, but you can probably see, oh, you won't get there. It's deep. We're probably better off live. It's not, it's just a general. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, you'll see here that there's some green areas, and that's really the only thing that's important about this map. The City of Ventura's historic preservation is something that I am very familiar with, but it really only covers about 0.5% of the properties in Ventura. So it's not like that we've suddenly found that there are a lot of properties in Ventura that are suddenly historic, but you can go in, take a look at that map and go, gosh, you know, that big thing in the middle is Ventura College. And it has some historic buildings, including the administration building, which was built by probably our most famous mid-century architect in Ventura, who's also responsible for the Presbyterian Church and the downtown library. And so Burkett is his name, and he's our master architect in Ventura. Most of his buildings are downtown, but he was brought on in the original master plan of the college. Then you have the Ventura Townhouse, which I mentioned, Welton Becket, and you have some interesting findings there in the hills. Some are single-family homes that are probably going to go up in value because of this, because generally, if these buildings are landmark eligible, you could put a Mills Act on them. And what a Mills Act would do is cut your property taxes in half. The idea is that if you have a historic building and a historic property, that those are more expensive to maintain in a historic way. And so there is this act that the city has adopted that allows you to make your house into a landmark. And if you were to sell that house, the new buyer would be able to apply and say, I'm going to cut my tax base in half. It doesn't necessarily help you if you have a tax base that comes from 20 years ago. It won't cut an old tax base in half, but it will take a normal new tax base next. So don't get excited. I live in an old house. I bought it in 1996. It would be landmark eligible, and I will put that in the real estate listing if I ever sell it, but I'm not really planning to sell it. So there are some interesting findings. What the survey is finding and the drafts that are coming in are coming all the way from Satakoy. This month was the college area. We're moving towards Midtown. This particular set of findings is all the way to Mills. We don't have any data from Midtown yet, and we don't really have any data from Pierpont yet. So there's sections of town that are coming online, and the Historic Preservation Committee is looking at the data and saying, hey, maybe you missed something here. Maybe this thing that you think is historic is really a building that was built in 1990 to look historic. Some of these survey findings are very preliminary, and it's done on what's called a reconnaissance survey. So it really is people driving down the streets and then looking at permit files and saying, it appears that this building was built 50, 60, 75 years ago, and it appears to still be in the same format, the same design as it was 50 or 60 years ago. Therefore, it might be eligible as a landmark. This doesn't really change anybody's property if it's suddenly found to be eligible. And if you take a look at this map, you'll see that most of this map is in fact not eligible. So there are some dark green dots, and those dark green dots are currently landmarks. So at the very top edge near Arroyo Verde, you have the Terry House, you have the Dudley House over there next to the college. Mill School, I think, is in there, that property. So this is happening citywide, and it really gives the planning department the ability to plan ahead and say, hey, look, if there is something that is historic or potentially historic, we don't want to basically allow a demolition permit before we've taken another look at it, before we realize what we're dealing with. So that's what it means. It really is about minimizing demolitions in the city, and they don't happen very often. But that is the basic overview. And if you go to the link in the chat, it will take you to the staff report. And one of the links on the staff report is DPR forms. The DPR forms are called Department of Parks and Recreation forms. That's what you want to look for if you want to read about each of those middle green photos or middle green dots that are on that map, and see what they are, see how they were evaluated, and see what they might be. So for the people in the room, I have a QR code, so you can follow that. All right, so if that's it, I will just take questions because I don't want to belabor it at all. Yes, sir. Mr. Klein.
Sorry. So it's not a question, it's just more of an impressive fact, but I think you need to relate it because I can't remember. When did we ask for this?
Yeah, Nasarenko was 2015.
Okay.
I mean, basically every council, including Mike, has taken another look at it, looked at the budget, and unanimously forwarded it on. So there was a context, basically a history of the entire city done. They said, okay, now that we have this sort of 2-year plan, we're in the middle of COVID, so surveying didn't happen for a while. Now the surveying's happening and the data is trickling in. And they obviously found more than they thought, so it's taken a little longer.
So again, this is more comment than question, but it's a beautiful thing that it finally got done. And I think you had a lot to do with pushing that. But I also just point out, because I'm sure a lot of people are going, oh, great, look at all this historic stuff. I would argue 85% of that green stuff is publicly held land.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing, right? So I just wanted to make sure people will see that and say,
yeah, those big parcels, that's Buena, that's Anacapa, that's Pacific School. That's, yeah, these historic schools, they may or may not be really historic. I mean, we're in the process of putting the Washington School in Midtown on the National Register, and we're getting pushback from the school district on that. And so if somebody were to say, oh, well, we want to put Pacific High on the National Register, that might be a much harder row to hoe, sort of. So we're not saying that they're absolutely historic, but they could be. And so if somebody wanted to build a 8-story building on top of Pacific High School, it's like, well, let's take a look at this and see how's that going to work. And these things are possible in the future. Any other? Yes. It is the only one that is in the website for this Historic Preservation Committee meeting. So if you were going to go back in the agendas to last month, you would see everything from, what is it, Victoria East, all the way out to Satakoy. Satakoy School was mentioned. Montalvo School was mentioned. They were also both, Satakoy School is a Roy C. Wilson, but Montalvo School is also a Burkett. Victoria Corridor was on there, I believe. And like I said, we're sort of moving westward, and most of what's happening in downtown has already been surveyed once or twice over the years, and is just the new things are being picked up. Every 20 years, you sort of say, hey, look, there might be new things that are historic. Now we're looking at the 50s and the 60s, and this survey actually goes up to the 80s. Not a lot of great stuff from the 80s, but there's one or two. Yeah. Anne, any questions? Anne was an HPC member. Tyson was an HPC member. Very smart architects and historians on the HPC looking at this stuff. And we try to support them as much as possible. All right. Thank you. You guys can pass that QR code around and keep it.
Thank you so much, Schafer. Really appreciate it. All right, I have a couple of things I wanted to just mention before we bring up Mike Johnson. We, as always, want to share our deep felt gratitude for the use of this room. CAPS TV offers this to us at no charge. They've also been really wonderful at helping us with questions, spending time teaching us how to use this technology, which is pretty fabulous. So just take a moment. Let's thank them. I also wanted to mention that the next free day for the Ventura Botanical Gardens is Halloween. Yeah. So, Mike?
All right, good evening, everybody. I wanted to do a little bit of cleanup from all the stuff that we've heard, touching on some of the things. Most recently, Don Wood has left. I will tell you that the rails with trails through to Piru is not going to happen. Ventura, we're going to build our segment, but Supervisor Kelly Long killed the rest of it. So it's not going to happen. No, what it is the ag, there's a handful of ag users. It's not that many, but they just don't want it near their property. And so I understand that, but this is, I will say this, I said something about this at a council meeting. I said this to the city manager today when we met. I hope that the Ventura City Council appoints somebody to the Ventura County Transportation Commission, which oversees this, who is going to be an advocate for Ventura. Because there are really important projects that come down to, being able to bring people over to your side at the VCTC. And this would be one of them. One supervisor can have a very loud voice. So yeah, and at some point it could be revisited, but basically there is no longer a plan for that bike trail out through Piru. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, as you probably know, Telegraph Road has been under construction. The end is in sight. The end is in sight. It is so close that they cannot tell me when it would be, because at this point, there's a lot of just buttoning things up for what they've been doing. But there's also they're at the point now where they can't always predict what they're going to need to do in 2 days. But that's because the end is in sight. I appreciate everybody's patience. Telegraph Road was in terrible shape long before I was on council. Long before I was on council, I was complaining about it. And they said, we are not going to fix Telegraph Road because we're going to tear it up in 2020 to put down a water main. But it'll be done by 2021 or 2022. And so here we still are. And we really do hope to have the water main stuff done by the end of the year and have an actual nice, clean road for everybody to drive on. I apologize for the state of it. But we are doing it. Similarly, I don't know if you've noticed, but in a lot of the places around town, if you walk the sidewalks like I do every day, you have noticed that there may be blue numbers in weird places on the sidewalks. That's because the city is doing something new and not without risk, which is sending out crews to document every disruption on the sidewalks. Every single disruption so that they can be addressed. Now, this means that I've gotten some emails, people complaining that there's some black cold patch on their sidewalk. And wouldn't it be better if the sidewalk were replaced? Yes, it would, but we cannot replace all of the sidewalks at the same time. And so if you see right now, you're going to see blue numbers that are for follow-up. You're going to see cold patch in places where there's too much uplift. And then soon there'll be grinding going on. And at the same time, they're going to be going back and replacing sidewalk panels. To put this all into perspective, when I started city council, we were spending about $65,000 a year on sidewalks. This year, we're spending over $1 million on sidewalks. That's going to continue. But Whittier Avenue in our district, I fought to get that included in the CIP program because just Whittier is probably going to cost $150,000 because it all has to be torn out and redone. But so you're going to see lots of the cold patch. Know that it's a good thing. You know, Ann and I know somebody, we have a friend who lost her husband because he tripped on a bad sidewalk in the city. And so we are going to put down cold patch. Somebody complains to me that it looks ghetto. I don't care. I just don't. Okay. So we got the sidewalks. Our new city attorney starts on October 28th. This could mean things are a bit different in the city. We have not had a good city attorney in a while. Right now we have an interim city attorney. He's a nice guy. He's an interim city attorney. The new guy is very highly qualified. I don't know how it's going to change things in the city, but it is going to be a change for the better. But there may be some things that are going to change pretty quickly over the next year based on what the new city attorney wants to do. And that just comes down to his style of doing things. Okay, another quick update on gasoline. As you know, the Sinclair station down at Pierpont was leaking fuel. It was about 2,000 gallons. As far as we can tell, it was just 2,000 gallons and it didn't spread everywhere. And so fortunately, we're looking at a rather narrow area for remediation. We were all worried that it would turn out to be much worse than what initially it is. I will say this, it's very expensive. It's probably well beyond what the insurance policy for the gas station has. So we're hoping that the state is going to step in and help us. Just in the first few days, just the first week, we spent $1 million dealing with the emergency there. So in the meanwhile, I'll say this, if the Sinclair station reopens, please visit it. I say that because we need to hand him a bill. And the more money you spend there, the more he'll be able to pay the city. I wanted to touch a little bit on the ADA stuff. You know, my wife and I have actually been through the process with some complaints. The ADA process, if there is an issue, you raise it, they have the opportunity to fix it. And they should fix it. The issue comes when places don't fix it, and that's when they can get in trouble. But the city, I know about all this because the city has been proactive, and no other city in the county has done this. The city has held seminars. We brought in an outside expert to have seminars for business owners on ADA compliance. And so, and a number of us council members attended those as well, to bring in small business owners to explain, here's how it works. Here are the things you can do. There are things businesses can and should do to make sure that they are ADA compliant before there's a complaint. And in fact, if they do some of those things, and if you have a small business and you're curious about this, there is a process you can do where you start the process of having your property inspected. It's a very confidential thing, but that provides you some legal oomph if it comes down to it. It provides you some legal defense if it comes down to that. I will say that, you know, if my wife filed a complaint every time she couldn't access a store or restaurant, that would be a full-time job. Even here in Ventura, it is still a common problem. There is a place on Main Street that insists on blocking the sidewalk every single day. So ADA, okay. So what's been going on at council? It's been actually a pretty slow thing at council, except for last night we talked about Main Street moves. And so we got back the survey results. I have to say, I wanted to see the survey. I think the survey is garbage. It doesn't mean anything to me. So the survey is not helpful. At our next meeting, which is November 12th, council will make the decision on what to do about Main Street moves. Yes, because the survey said that there could be assessments to property owners. There would not be assessments to property owners. And so, and it talked about costly assessments and for the business owners, if you own a business, there might be costly assessments to the property owners that could be passed on to you as the tenant. There's no assessments. There's no assessments. There's no mechanism to do the assessments. Yes. Yes.
Survey.
So city staff did the survey, but when council directed staff to put out the survey, we directed them to work with stakeholders. They worked with a collaboration team, which included 2 people who are suing the city to reopen it to cars. And they insisted on that language. So I have personally, since the survey, talked to a property owner, and when I explained there would be no assessment, they changed their view on this. But when they've been told that if we close it to cars, they might get a bill for $50,000, which is what they've been quoted, and then they get a survey which says there may be an assessment. The process of closing it, if there were going to be an assessment, they'd have to approve it by vote. It couldn't be a surprise thing. It just couldn't. There are 2 different ways we could do it. If we use the pedestrian mall law, we could say when we're setting it up, we're asking the property owners to vote, there will be 0 assessments from this. And that is what council has always directed, that there would be 0 assessments. And then there could be 0 assessments. The other way, if we closed it under traffic code, vehicle code, there would be no assessments from that. Unless, and this is always unless the businesses themselves or the property owners themselves vote to have a special district and assess themselves. Just like we got into trouble. I don't know if you recall, we got into trouble when we tried to do an assessment for the brush mitigation. And we returned everybody's money because you can't just hand somebody a bill. Right? Anybody who is in the high fire severity zone, you got a bill. You can't do that. We had to give all the money back. So here's the thing. I don't think Main Street Moves is going to say. I think it will reopen to cars. I myself I love it personally. I am on the fence about it for a bunch of different reasons. But November 12th is going to be the date. The problem is that, you know, it was over 2 years ago that council told staff, do the pedestrian mall law, get design guidelines, start shopping for ballards. And it took 2 years to get design guidelines. It took 2 years to start the CEQA process. We never started the pedestrian mall law process. And it took, and now here we are over 2 years later, and council still hasn't made a decision. And meanwhile, the businesses, yeah, it looks bad down there. But would you spend $60,000, $70,000, $90,000 building a fancy new parklet if you thought that come January might have to tear it down? No, no. So all that said, I think it's sad. One of the last meeting, the most important votes I make on council might be to reopen it to cars. And that's just, it's complicated, but that's where it is. We're so far into this process and we still don't have good data. We don't have good data on the taxes. Council doesn't have that information. So I've asked for it. I've suggested ways to get it. And so we're left with these weird anecdotes. And that's just terrible. So anyhow, Russell.
How do other council members feel about the survey? Similarly to you, or are there some who are very much supporters of the results and the data?
Well, if you watch last night's meeting, I would say that you've probably got one or two that really want to keep it the way it is. I didn't make a big point about being on the fence, but I'm on the fence. You've got two that absolutely want it reopened to cars tomorrow. And then you've got a couple that aren't sure. I had to go into the council meeting and I had to impeach the survey and say, why is this language in there? This is one of those situations where Peter Goldenring, who is suing the city, had input on the survey in a way that no council member did. So it's upsetting. So Dina's question was there any response to that? No. The survey says things like, there may be assessments. Council has always said there would never be any assessments. The survey asks these hypotheticals. Okay, well, would you maybe support it if it had smaller boundaries? Would you maybe support it if it was only closed during the summer? The survey never asked, would you support it if it was at zero cost to property owners? Because that's always been the intention. It didn't ask that. So the assessments that we're talking about, so using the parklet, they're using up parking spaces. And so we lease those out. The city leases those out to the business. The assessments that we're talking about, the assessments that people have been told, somebody went to businesses and said, it's going to cost the city millions of dollars to do this, and they're going to hand you the bill. And so that's where that came from. This idea that if we proceeded, that we would be sending out bills for tens of thousands of dollars, which has never been the intention of the city council. And we don't have the authority to do that. So we have the survey. Sales tax. Sales tax is soft. I don't know what that means because I don't know what's happening really in the rest of the city. Downtown is down. Downtown is mostly restaurants and retail. Restaurants and retail are soft everywhere else. So it's hard to make that comparison. Peter Goldenring, when he did public comments and he showed a slide showing where he cherry picked a couple quarters in the past and said, in Q2 from 2022 to 2023, the downtown closure area dropped 10%. And the next quarter it dropped 11%. And he had that for all the different areas in the city. So I pulled the slide back up and pointed out that that was the exact same pattern that Midtown has. because Midtown is the part of town that has the mix that is most similar to the one downtown. And Midtown didn't drop 11 and 12% because of the closure. But I am stuck as a council member trying to get this for the last 4 years. And I don't have enough to make a decision. I will say this. I know that if we reopen it to cars, that businesses will suffer and people will lose their jobs. That doesn't mean that I'm going to vote to keep it the way it is. But that's the reality. Businesses will suffer and people will lose their jobs. Some businesses will do better. Some property owners will do better. Some businesses outside the downtown corridor will do better. But there are absolutely business owners that will be laying people off when we reopen it to cars. So it's a tough one. I'm not lying. It's a tough one because you can't just think, here's the thing. The public loves it. I love it. My wife loves it. We as council can't just go on that. We do have to think about the businesses. We do have to think about the property owners. And it's not a simple thing. It's not like neither answer is an easy one. Whatever we do, we're making a change. So Marco
Yeah,
has a question.
I would agree that there are probably other economic factors that could be looked at. So many different points of and data at some point. Even the deputy mayor was talking about paralysis by analysis and all these different things. You can throw out surveys, use previous surveys. But at the end of the day, I mean, I could also ask you if there's alternatives that you would support. Because to me, I think that's just two extremes: open, close, open, close. I feel like I would urge council to look at whether you open or close. I think we can kind of agree that in its current state, it can be improved. If you're going to keep it closed, it should be better beautified, because that's one of the things people are like, it's just doesn't look good right now. And if you reopen it, there are some perks that you're losing from having had it been open. So I would urge council to have a discussion of, okay, for example, we're going to open it, but we're going to do something that still benefits the community. Be it, I know it's more complicated. Downtown Main Street's very old and historic. This is just one example of people say, oh, the sidewalks are wide enough. I don't know. I could see them being a bit.
They're
wide.
not. They're not.
They're not wide enough. Yeah.
They're not.
That's just one example I'm saying. If you were to open it, I know it's costly. Everything's costly if you're trying to beautify it, be it if you were to reopen it. I would think that if it goes back to its previous state, it could still be improved. If you keep it closed, it can be improved. So either way, I feel like there's more direction for staff in either way, but that's just how I feel.
Well, so for example, it was over 2 years ago, we said start shopping for bollards, because we're going to need bollards regardless. If we reopen it to cars, we still need bollards, because we do the winter wine walk. We do the stuff at the 4th of July, and nobody thinks that the temporary barriers are the solution for that. We have seen too many problems. So the bollards, regardless, we should have them already. We don't. We don't. So the issue with trying to find a compromise, there is not a lot of support for doing it seasonally, but it could be done. But it couldn't be done like on the weekends. The thing to remember, we have the design guidelines. The businesses will be required to meet them if we make it permanent. They'll be required to meet them. The issue is, once they go in, they need to be assured that they're going to be there and functioning for at least a couple of years. Dina.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm always curious. I know that the closure was born of the pandemic, of course, but in the meantime, I feel like perhaps the city or whomever, don't want to lay it at anybody's door necessarily, is missing a big opportunity for enhancing the community involvement in that section. For example, things like a movie night where you visit a downtown business, you go to the movie, you're entered into a drawing, things that would continue to enhance the experience of the people who are visiting downtown, encourage community members to visit the businesses. Some businesses say they're doing great, other ones say they're struggling. Well, that would be a way to help the struggling ones, is by using the format and the closed atmosphere and then maybe the communal setting to encourage people to come downtown. It seems like you could come up with a million ideas of things that you could do if you wanted it to be good, as opposed to, oh, it's ugly, we're not going to do anything, and let's open it up because people don't think their business is doing well.
Well, you know, those things used to happen. They're arranged by Downtown Ventura Partners. And that is the property-based is the PBID, property-based something district. What's it stand for? Based improvement, property-based improvement district. And so Downtown Ventura Partners is the property-based improvement district. They vote for their own assessments. That includes economic development. That includes having Kevin Clarice. Meredith Hart was once in charge of all that. And Downtown Ventura Partners did put on those events. Now that Peter Goldenring is chair of Downtown Ventura Partners, Downtown Ventura Partners directed staff, including Kevin, not to spend any economic development money in the closure area. And so the businesses in the closure area have had DVP turn their backs on them. Kevin Clarice has gotten in trouble for walking around to the businesses on Main Street in the closure area to ask them how they're doing. He's not supposed to do that without a board member present. I'm just going to tell you what's going on since I only have a couple weeks left. So, well, I will tell you that if a couple things. First is if I were an unscrupulous property owner, I would keep some of my things vacant by jacking up the prices, with the idea that I might be able to go to the city of Ventura and say, you now owe me 18 months of rent at $4 a square foot for a restaurant that was last updated in like 1992 restaurant space. We have the gasworks going on Thompson, which is going to compete with Main Street. If you're putting in restaurants and retail on Front Street there, do you want everybody doing well there? We have some property owners that are all in favor of it. They don't speak up much about it. But the other thing too is, so if you're a restaurant, if you're Finney's Craft House, you are leasing space from the city at just basic cost. It's not market rate, it's just cost. We are undercutting all of the interior space on the cost per square foot. And so one of the things that has been suggested is we should reopen it to cars and rethink it in a way where the property owners get to lease the parklets from the city and then turn around and charge their tenants for using the parklet. So there's a lot going on. Yeah, Kathy, finally, she's been waiting a long time.
Well, I just wanted to know what you thought of what I perceived watching the council meeting as a variability between the opinions of people in different blocks of
Yes.
downtown.
Well, there is some of that. One of the big property owners is the Catholic Church. And, you know, it was interesting hearing somebody say that the Catholic Church shouldn't have a say because they wouldn't have to pay an assessment. Nobody's going to pay an assessment. So it is variable. There are absolutely tenants who their businesses, they want it to stay the way it is. Their property owner, their landlord wants it reopened to cars. That happens. It's hard because for me, anecdotally, I've talked to more business owners who really want it. They got this poll and when they were asked questions about that said, considering that, you know, there could be costly assessments that are going to be passed on to you, do you still support it? That changed their minds. That changed their minds, understandably. Understandably, they're already paying to be members of DVP. So I forget what the question was. Oh, the variability from block to block. Yeah, the Catholic Church has a say. They own a lot of those buildings, and they're landlords. And you know, like Eclectique left not because of Main Street moves, but because of personal issues. But it was, you know, Eclectique was over on the other side of the street originally, and it was a much smaller space. And when he got to move across and Father Tom was his landlord, he got a great deal on the space. And I don't think that's a reason to discount Father Tom's views on it. Especially like the other night, my wife and I, we were at Paradise Pantry, and it's so nice to be out there and we're eating dinner and we can hear the choir practice. And Father Tom has talked about this community that extends beyond the doors of the mission. So we have that variability. It's just, you know, I don't know what to do with the survey. I just don't.
May I ask a question?
Oh yeah, there's a question. Yeah, Kathy.
Hi, yes. Kathy Thompson, Ventura, Friends of the Library. As far as modifying possibly each block, Foster Library has been so terribly impacted by the closure. We have lost handicap parking that was at the front of the building. We've lost the accessibility for families with strollers. Coming in the back is just not acceptable. There are stairs and undulating parking lot. And then also we have a bulk buyer that comes and picks up many used in books, the books that have been discarded from the library, and also donations that we're not able to use in our book sales. And the truck got stuck because there's only really one way to get out. There's a steep hill or there's a roundabout way to get out. They used to exit right down to Main Street, and they can't do that. It was stuck for 4 hours. Is there any way we can open from Fur to Chestnut to accommodate the library?
I would not have a problem with that. I will say, Kathy, though, that there's a bigger issue here, which was we put off until I am off. When I am off council is going to come back and decide what to do about parking, including the library, and the plan to make all of the parking at the library paid parking. So there's a separate issue there as well. There has been no solution to that. You know, I would have no problem with changing the boundaries, especially on that block, for the reasons you said. When we move to bollards, then there wouldn't be these temporary barriers that get placed haphazardly. Yeah. Jim?
Thank you.
Oh, so bollards. Bollards are just some sort of like typically they're just like they look like a concrete pole or a metal pole. At Target, they got the big round ones that look like, you know, we were in Dublin and they had ones that look like pencils around all the schools. There are ones, the point is we need removable ones, but I don't think we can afford like retractable ones that go up and down. Yes, I encourage everybody to follow the World Bollard Association on Twitter. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. And there's 1 minute left for the meeting. I'm going to pass it back to Barbara. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. So this was Mike's last attendance here, presentation here as a city council member. He has been incredibly informative over the last 4 years. And we do really appreciate it. We hope you're going to be here in January because we have something for you then. But we can't give it to you now because you're a council member. So, from the bottom of our hearts, very informative. That's really what we're all about, providing information to the community, and, having someone that provides all that information is super important. I also want to mention that we are going to be dark in November and December. So the next time we see you will be January. And I want to wish you, if there's nothing else, is there anything else? Marco? Okay, Shannon?
Thank you so much. This will only take a moment. My name is Shannon Fredericks, and I am VUSD trustee-elect for Area 3. And I just wanted to let the community know about some upcoming things that will be happening through Ventura Unified. First of all, next week will be Ventura Unified's fall break. So if you see kiddos out and about next week, they're not playing hooky, they don't have school. And following that, we will have, for Ventura Unified parents, School of Choice window will be opening on November 8th. And there will be a meeting at Buena on Tuesday, November 12th at 5:30. And it's the VUSD info night where all of the schools will be available to answer questions about the programs that they offer. And the School of Choice window will be open through December 2nd. So you'll probably want to attend that info night. And then super important for the community, we have 2 amazing plays getting ready to launch in November. First, Buena will be offering The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. That will be the November 7th through 9th, and then the following weekend, the 14th through 16th. And then Ventura High will be performing Clue, and that will be the weekend of November 14th through 17th, and then the 21st through 24th. So plenty of ways for you to connect with Ventura Unified.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so happy Halloween, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas. We'll see you in January.